name is Karen Neurohr, and I'm a librarian at Oklahoma State University, and I'm here in the Conoco Phillips Alumni Center today, which is October the 16th, 2009, and I'm here to interview Mr. Dwight Beck for the O State Stories Oral History Project at the library. Thank you, Mr. Beck, for coming and participating in our interview today.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Are you here for the 50th class reunion?
Yes, I am.
Great. Why did you decide to participate in that?
Oh, we intended to come all along, and when we got the information in the mail, we thought, well, it'd be kind of fun. Take a couple days off and spend time here on campus.
Can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up and about your early life?
Sure. I'm the only one in my family of 5 that was actually born in a hospital. It was kind of almost a one-room shack of a hospital in Lucene, Oklahoma. Lucene's just a white spot in the road now, just west of Perry, Oklahoma. But anyway, I grew up on a farm in Noble County, Oklahoma. Attended the local high school and then went on to college at NOC and subsequently here at Oklahoma State.
Was there a high school at Lucene that you attended, or was
No,
there
I
another
was
high school?
I was just born there, and we actually lived on a farm about 40 or 50 miles from there.
Oh. And who were your parents?
Abner and Pearl Beck. And my mother was a student here at, I think, well, it was in the late 19-teens, and I think it was kind of a preparatory school at that particular time. That was what she was attending, but she actually attended here, I don't know how long. But anyway, our roots go back to Oklahoma State quite a number of years.
And where are you living now?
We live on the farm that my grandfather settled on in the early 1900s. We're still living on the family farm. We're the 3rd generation Beck family to live on that farm.
What do you raise?
Well, traditional Oklahoma crops is mainly small grains, wheat, milo. There is a lot of corn grown up there now. We haven't been growing any. We have alfalfa. Of course, we have cattle. Like I say, it's just a traditional Oklahoma farm for this part of the country.
So you mentioned that your mother had come to school here. Was she a big influence on your decision to attend OSU?
Not really. We just, this was basically the university I'd always wanted to go to, even though I went the first 2 years at a junior college. Coming from a small high school, I sometimes think it's good to go to a smaller college to start out with. I wish I'd spent all 4 years here, but it was a good experience being involved in both schools.
What did you major in here?
Well, I started in chemical engineering, but I found out that going to a small high school, my math background was pretty weak. But anyway, I ended up in a college of education with a degree in math and science.
Are there any classes or faculty members that stand out in your memory?
Oh gosh, I can't. I'll probably get his name wrong, but my advisor in the College of Education. The name that sticks in my mind was Frazier, but that may be incorrect. I'm not sure, but he was pretty influential and a good mentor. And he actually helped me get my first job because he had come down here from the Omaha, Nebraska public schools, and I graduated at midterm, and so jobs were kind of hard to come by. And the College of Education people probably won't like this comment, but I kind of wanted to go on and get my master's degree, but I was so disenchanted with with the education courses that I would have to take, that I decided I'd just go into teaching. So Dr. Frazier got me the interview at the Omaha Public Schools in Omaha, Nebraska, and we moved up there. And actually 2 of our sons were born in Nebraska. So they're Cornhuskers, even though they went to school here.
What buildings were your classes in?
Well, of course, I had a lot of classes in the engineering building, and a lot of them were in the classroom building, which was fairly new at that time. And of course, the library at that time was fairly new, and it was one of the top libraries probably in the nation, as was our student union. It was by far the best student union in Oklahoma, of all the universities in Oklahoma. And of course, I had a lot of classes in the life science. I believe it's called the Life Sciences building at that time. I don't know what it's called now, but.
Did you have any classes in the Quonset huts? No,
but I remember the Quonset huts. I may have had one. Now that I think about it, it might have been a descriptive geometry class. But yeah, there were several of the Quonset huts still on campus at that time.
During your time on campus, Oklahoma A&M College became Oklahoma State University, joined the Big 8 Conference, and became the Cowboys. How did students generally react to these changes?
Well, I don't think there was any thoughts probably one way or the other. I believe at the time the general consensus of opinion was that it would just be better for all the students to have a degree that said Oklahoma State University rather than Oklahoma A&M, because a lot of people in other parts of the country thought of them as an agricultural college, which it was much more than an agricultural college.
So it was an identity.
Yeah, just an identity thing.
Uh-huh. Did you ever see Frank Eaton compete on campus? Tell me about that.
Well, being a native of Oklahoma, I'd known of him for years and knew that he was a resident of Perkins, Oklahoma, and of course he was alive and quite spirited whenever I was going to school here. So he was almost always a grand marshal of the homecoming parade, or he was involved with a lot of the sports activities on the campus, and the celebrations that we had at that time.
So would he actually attend, was he attending as a mascot figure at that time?
No, he wasn't a mascot. Well, I don't know whether you might refer to him as a mascot, but he was just the headliner, you might say, of a lot of the celebrations.
Did he pack his pistols with him?
Sure he did.
Did he wear a badge too?
I don't remember for sure, probably so.
Uh-huh. And you said that he was the Grand Marshal of homecoming parades?
Oh yeah, he was in every homecoming parade that I can remember for many years.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember exactly when he passed away, but he was a mainstay at all the homecoming celebrations as long as he was able.
Mm-hmm. Horseback for the parade?
I don't remember for sure. I think most of the time he was riding in some vehicle, but I don't think I ever remember him on horseback, but he may have been.
Okay. I've heard stories about him actually shooting his gun on campus. Do you know anything about that?
No.
That story or anything?
No.
Okay. Where did you live when you were going to school here?
Cordell Hall.
What was that like?
Well, we had a super group of men there, and our house mother and father, they were just top notch. And for some reason that name has slipped my mind, but but they were very strict, and they ran a tight ship, and we were always at the top of the residence halls as far as grade point average and that sort of thing was concerned. So we were pretty proud of the people that lived in Cordell Hall. I actually lived up on the east side, up on the 4th floor, and if the weather was bad, well, we could stay in our room and watch the football games. Now that's all blocked off.
What did your room look like?
Well, it was a fairly large room. We had two dormer windows, and I think that room would accommodate three people. However, most of the time there was only two there. So it was a fairly large room, and the furnishings were nice, and we had a phone right outside of the door and that sort of thing. So accommodations were very good.
What about the food situation? Was there a cafeteria in Cordell?
Yeah, we had our own cafeteria, food service, and that's where I started gaining weight.
So it must have been pretty good food.
It was good food. It really was.
Did Cordell host dances or other social activities?
Oh, they had several different things that they always hosted. And of course, Homecoming Day was a day where most parents came and visited the campus. So we were involved in a lot of different things. I didn't participate in a lot of the so-called extracurricular activities at that time, but it was quite an involved. It was a nice group of young men, as I've said before, and we had a lot of campus leaders that lived at Cordell Hall. At the time I was there, the ROTC cadet colonel lived right next door to me. So he was the top-ranking ROTC officer at Oklahoma State at the time. I'll mention a story about him. That as a top-ranked officer, he had what we called 3 diamonds on his shoulder, and the military people tried to get him, kept after him to make a decision as to whether he wanted to take a reserve commission or a regular Army commission. And he kept putting them off, and all along he didn't want a regular Army commission. He wanted to take the reserve commission and then go in and serve his 2 years and get out and continue his education. Anyway, whenever he told them that he was going to take his reserve commission, they cut one of the diamonds off of his shoulders. They demoted him in rank. So we've always laughed about that he went on to be I think he went on to get a law degree and was a general counsel and I think secretary for the Williams brothers, and I believe it's the Williams brothers in Tulsa. Anyway, a very large firm. Mm-hmm. So he was quite successful, even though they demoted him in rank.
That's a good story. Was there a curfew at Cordell for the students?
I don't remember. But if you came in fairly late, usually there was a knock on your door shortly after you returned. Because like I say, our house parents were really on top of things. And I don't really remember that there was a curfew. 12 o'clock was, considered a kind of a cutoff period. If you came in after that, well, you were usually asked some questions as to where you'd been and what you'd been doing.
Would the door be locked after that?
No, I don't recall that the doors were locked. I think they were open the entire night. I may be wrong about that, but I don't think there was a curfew. It was kind of understood, though, that you ought to be you ought to be in your room by about 12.
The next question has to do with like rules or standards, and it has to do with public displays of affection, and if there was a serious infraction for that sort of thing. Do you remember anything about that?
I don't remember anything
Okay.
about it. No.
You mentioned your dorm mom and dad. Could you tell me a little bit about them? There was just one couple living there.
One
and
couple that lived there.
Probably several hundred young men.
She was actually a registered nurse, and several years after I graduated from OSU, I had to spend a few days in the hospital at the Ponca City Hospital, and lo and behold, she was one of the nurses on duty. She was a few years younger than her husband, and I think her husband had passed away, and she went back and worked as a nurse. Or he had retired, and I think maybe he was still alive at that time, but he had retired and she was still working.
Did the students tend to form a bond with the dorm parents?
Well, I think so. Like I say, they were just super people, and we didn't have any serious problems that I know of when I was living on campus. I think there were a lot more restrictions on alcoholic beverages. I never did develop a taste for alcohol anyway, so it wasn't a problem for me, and it wasn't a problem for most of the people that I associated with. But there were some pretty strict rules about alcohol. There was no alcoholic beverages in any of the rooms, or if you were caught with that, you were probably, I guess expelled would be the word, from college, or at least put on probation. Maybe you had to sit out a semester or something like that.
Do you still keep in touch with any friends that you made while you were living in Cordell?
Yeah. I just talked to one of my friends that graduated in '59. He was my roommate in college, and his wife, of course, graduated from here. And I talked with him just 2 or 3 days ago. I was hoping maybe he'd come up for the celebration, but he didn't. He was best man at our wedding. And there's a couple of one of the fellows that I told you about earlier, Royce Parr, and we keep in contact with him. They live in Tulsa. So you make some pretty close friends in college, and I think probably your college friends are the ones that you're going to be closer to. At least that's been our situation. We're closer to our college friends than we were or have been to our high school, because most people, your high school friends are scattered in a lot of different directions. And so your college friends, a lot of times, it's more close-knit, and you kind of follow each other's career and that sort of thing.
What do you remember most about homecoming when you were a student here? You mentioned the parade already.
Oh, I don't know. It was just a good time for celebration, and like I say, usually our parents came down to the game, and it was just time to spend with people.
Did people tailgate back then?
No
tailgating.
Not that. That's something that's kind of unique to Oklahoma State, really, in probably the last 10 years, maybe 15.
Were you involved in any campus activities or organizations when you were here?
Oh yeah, I was in most of the clubs that were affiliated with my major, and I was in a political organization. I was in the Young Republican organization, and through the years, it seems as though putting politics aside, but the fact is that it seems that most of the people that attend Oklahoma State are more conservative than those that attend the other major university in the state. I think that's because a lot of us are rural, born and raised, and so those values tend to filter down. And through the years, I've become disenchanted with a lot of our universities and the professors at a lot of those universities trying to instill their beliefs on the college students. I think that's a real danger that we have in our educational system today. Not so much here at Oklahoma State, but I know I had some pretty frank discussions with some of my professors when I was here, who espoused liberal ideas that I didn't agree with at the time. And of course, those ideas and those values have stuck with me through the rest of my life.
What values are you referring to as far as people from a rural background? Which ones would you say?
Of course,
fit there?
A lot of the ideas, I guess, probably would be concerning the selection of your lifetime partner, and farming. Of course, I've been a farmer all my life, but I've also done other things. But you have to work together to accomplish your goals, and in other lines of work, and sometimes husbands and wives seem to go separate ways. But whenever you're working on a farm or a ranch or any kind of business where the spouses are included in the business, then those values tend to be more conservative and the idea of a strong home life and that sort of thing. Now, that's one thing that bothers me about today's generation, even my children and my grandchildren. When we had kids at home, we always had 3 meals a day where we sat down at the table and enjoyed our meals and had our family discussions and things like that. And now I don't think most families hardly ever sit down for a meal during the week even. And of course on Sundays we always had the traditional Sunday meal, and those are some of the things that I think are a strong family is important, and we're pretty proud of our sons and our daughter-in-laws and our grandchildren.
Did they come to OSU?
Yes. All 3 of our sons attended here. Only one actually graduated here, but the one boy, he just wasn't particularly interested in going to college, and the other one, he just lacked a few hours in graduating. But and then we've had 3 granddaughters that have attended here, and we're pretty proud of Jimmy Kay. She was selected as what do they call them? Seniors of distinction.
Outstanding senior.
Yeah. And then she was also selected as one of the 13, I think, outstanding seniors for 2009.
I met Jimmy Kay.
Oh, really?
Yes, we had our library dean invites the outstanding seniors and seniors of significance in for luncheons to honor them, and I coordinate those for the library. And I remember meeting her. I was very impressed with her. Yeah. Was it different since you came in as a transfer student? Did you come in then as a junior?
Yes.
Your junior level. It interests me that you still joined organizations and activities and things coming in as a transfer student. Did you think that was unusual, or was that pretty expected, or was your...
Well, I think the climate here at OSU facilitates the students taking part in these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly not an exclusive fraternity, as you would say, here at OSU, and I think that's something that has been maintained and continues to even today. So
Mm-hmm.
no, I didn't think it was unusual. It was just something that you did.
Mm-hmm. Did you hold any leadership positions in any of your organizations?
No, not really.
Okay.
You know, there are people that are joiners,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't one of those. I chose the ones that I wanted to belong to fairly closely, but I never did aspire to any roles of leadership. I mean, I was an active participant, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get involved totally.
You may not remember this, but how did you learn about the organizations? How did you know which ones were out there and be able to choose?
Oh, I think probably through the old college was the main thing, and there was always, there were always students on campus that were active in different organizations, and if they knew you, they might ask you to come. Why don't you come to this organization, or why don't you get involved here or there? So.
Okay. What were some student traditions and activities that you remember that stand out from your time? Anything in particular?
I can't think of anything right now. I know that even back then we had so many students that not everyone could attend the basketball games, for example. You were either an even or an odd, and so you only got to attend about half of the games. But most of the students were fairly active in participating in the sporting events.
Did you see the game that Wilt Chamberlain
Yes, I
played
did.
in?
Yeah.
What do you recall about that?
Well, I remember we won at the buzzer by 2 points, and of course the next day we didn't have school, so I can remember that. But I also remember, and my wife, she was my fiance at the time, the first, she's from Pennsylvania, and the first basketball game that I took her to, we played Cincinnati, and Cincinnati had an All-American player named Oscar Robertson, I can't remember exactly. But anyway, I don't know whether that record still stands or not, but he scored the most points that had ever been scored at Gallagher Arena that night. And if my memory's correct, and I may be wrong, I need to look in the archives and just see for sure if my memory's right. But even though he scored all those points, I think Coach Iba managed to beat Cincinnati that night. I think that we won the game, but I'm not positive. Of course, Eddie Sutton was a junior or senior then, so, and
What was his playing style?
well, if you played for Coach Iba, it was one style. It was defense, and you didn't take shots that weren't high percentage shots. So, and I think Coach Sutton coached that way, even though he changed as the times changed, but he still emphasized defense and shot selection.
What did you do for fun and entertainment?
Well, of course, we had movie theaters in Stillwater at that time. I tell you, most of us didn't have a lot of financial resources, and so we might go to a movie once or twice a month, but that was about it. And just the activities on campus kept you busy.
Did you have any favorite student hangouts on campus or off campus?
Not really.
What about dating? Did you meet your wife while you were going to school here?
No. I actually, like I say, my wife was from Pennsylvania. And I met my wife, I think I was a junior. It might have been my senior year in the fall semester, I'm not sure. But my brother was a naval aviator, and of course he was stationed on the East Coast, and he met a young lady back there, and they subsequently were married, and I was best man at the wedding, and my wife was maid of honor, so that's how we met. But and then we kind of carried on our courtship by mail for several months, and she was going to nurses school at Philadelphia Methodist Hospital, and so after she graduated, she moved out here, and we were subsequently married out here.
Did you have a car while you were in school?
I never owned a car. I had my brother's car. He was transferred out of the country for about a year, so yeah, I had one of the hottest cars on campus. It's a 1955 red and white Pontiac hardtop, so it was a nice car. But I did, like I say, our finances were such that it mainly stayed in the parking lot.
Did you work while you were in school?
Well, as a farmer, I would go home on weekends, and a lot of times after class, whenever I had, like the year I had my brother's car, I'd go home and help my dad with the farm work.
You mentioned the library. Can you tell me anything in particular about your memories of the library?
Well, I know it seemed awful big at the time, and I suppose it's a lot bigger now. But one thing that sticks in my mind about the library, one of our education classes, I can't remember which one it was now, but we had a lot of reading that we had to do. And there was just a minimum number of books that were available. And so when the professor would give us an assignment, if at all possible, we'd rush to the library to get a hold of that book, because they were supposed to remain in the library. You could go to the library and read them, but they were supposed to stay there. And I can't remember, but most of the time, I couldn't get a hold of the book, and never would become available. And I found out that the other students were taking these books and they were hiding them in different places in the library. And maybe they might tell their friends, well, it's at such and so place, so they could get a hold of the book and read it. And it never entered my mind that I would even think of doing such a thing, but there were students that did those things, and that was kind of an aggravation.
I would imagine so. Was there any key event or development at OSU during your time as a student that you especially remember?
No, I really don't. Of course, the campus was growing. There was even a lot of construction back then, but nothing like we have now. Let's see. I think Dr. Wilhelm, wasn't it? Dr. Wilhelm was president, and then later on Dr. Com came on, and I don't really remember who was president when I graduated. I think Dr. Wilhelm.
Do you remember seeing him out on campus?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was out a lot? Okay. Were there any particular traditions that come to mind, either for Cordell or for campus, like student traditions, things that you knew were traditions that were just the way things were around here in particular?
I can't think of any. One thing I think they used to do, I don't know whether they still do it or not, but if you got engaged while you were here, your friends probably threw you in Theta Pond, but I don't know whether they do that anymore or not.
I've heard that they used to do that. I don't know if they do that now either. What is it about Oklahoma State that sparks the loyalty in the students and the alumni?
Well, I don't know. I just think that the leadership has been more down to earth, and most people, I think, understand that term. It's just always been a good atmosphere here at Oklahoma State, and we have a lot of traditions as far as the athletics are concerned. The wrestling team and the basketball team, and of course, in years past, the football team, but nobody's ever got really, you would say, the big head over their accomplishments. But I think the thing that's important, a lot of the people that I was associated with when I went to school here, and a lot of other graduates from Oklahoma State University I've worked with through the years, and they've just been good, solid citizens. And I think that's carried throughout from years past. And it's usually if you have a person who's graduated from Oklahoma State University, they're going to make a good employee and a good citizen of the community that they settle in.
That kind of goes into the next question, which is, how did attending OSU impact your life?
Well, I don't quite know how to answer that. Even back in 1959, and I don't know what the percentages are now, but only about a third of the students that started as freshmen actually graduated from college with a degree. It probably is higher now. I don't know. I know the numbers are a lot higher now. But the associations you make and the acquaintances that you make, it just goes a long way in whatever endeavor you decide to follow after you leave. Now, I went to work. It's kind of interesting. Only graduate students could take computer courses when I was here. And of course, I went into education, and I got interested in computers when I went to a special seminar day that we had there in the Omaha Public Schools. I actually went to the Mutual of Omaha headquarters, and we were touring the computer facility, and the young man that was taking us through, I asked him what his education background was, and he said, "Oh, I just have a high school education." I said, "Well, how did you get started in computers?" He said, "Well, I took an aptitude test, and it showed that I would be good in computers, and so they gave me a job here, and I've been working with computers ever since." And it just triggered something into my mind. Now, why is our educational system behind where our big corporations are. We should be generating employees for the big corporations. But at that time, it was an exclusive group that got to take computer courses here at the university. Well, of course, that's all changed now, but at that time, all the major corporations would hire somebody that had a good aptitude, and then they would train them. Well, now it's kind of the other way around. The universities are doing the training, and the different corporations are looking for people with good educational backgrounds.
So you started out as a teacher, and then you moved into some other career areas?
I teaching salaries weren't very much in 1959. I think my first job I got paid $4,050 a year. Well, I taught up there for about 2.5 years, and then we moved back to Oklahoma. They say they can take the boy away from the farm, but they can't take the farm out of the boy. So I came back here because I wanted to be associated with the farm. And I had to take a decrease in pay. I was making about $4,500 a year up there at the time, and when I moved back down here, I got a job teaching math, $3,900 a year. So after a year of that, I guess there's a little bit of jealousy on my part, but when I found out that the band instructor was making more money than the math teacher, when they put the contract in front of me, I said, I'm not going to sign this contract unless you pay me $5,000 a year. Oh, we can't do that. I said, well, then I'm not going to sign the contract. Anyway, I started looking for another job, and Conoco, the headquarters office basically for Conoco was in Ponca City at that time. And they had just announced setting up a new department called the Central Computer Department. So I told my wife, I said, well, if that young guy in Omaha with a high school education can work with computers, I'm going to see if I can't get a job down there. And I was fortunate to get a job. A graduate from OU and a graduate from Georgia Tech University were the first three non-experienced computer programmers that was hired in that department. So we started from scratch, but I thought I was in pretty good company being with actually he had a master's degree from Georgia Tech, and the other young lady had her degree in math from OU. So I tried to hold up the OSU end of it.
Did you stay with that career quite a while?
Yeah, I was there about 14, almost 15 years. And of course I'd farmed all those years, and my dad at that time was 76, and he was wanting to kind of semi-retire. And I had too many responsibilities at Conoco and too many on the farm, and I made the choice to go back to the farm. I'd have probably been much better off financially, but I don't know. A lot of the people that I worked with, they're retired and 6 foot under now. I still work every day, and my health is good, and I think that's important at this stage of our life.
Mm-hmm. Do you return to campus often?
Oh, quite often. We're in Stillwater quite often. Ponca City I've always considered my hometown, but the consolidation of Conoco and Phillips, and they moved almost all the professional people out of Ponca City. And our city is having a tough time. In some respects, there's just a lot of vacant, Main Street businesses. Of course, that's not uncommon. in most cities, but Stillwater is alive and booming, and we like to come down here to do a lot of our shopping.
What advice would you give to OSU students today?
Well, I think they need to strive to be the best they can be. Grades, for example, grade point average is important, because I was in a position with a large corporation where I had to interview prospective employees, and also one thing that I always looked for was the extracurricular activities. I worked with a lot of people that were probably a whole lot more intelligent than I am, but a lot of them couldn't seem to get along with their fellow employees, fellow associates, and a lot of them had a hard time communicating with people. For example, in the computer department, we were responsible for developing systems that we had to teach other people how to use, and a lot of those people couldn't communicate, couldn't get through to the other people that maybe didn't have a college education, or just weren't quite as capable as they were. So the best advice I could give is be conscientious about your work, get affiliated with extracurricular activities, communicate with your professors. Most of these professors, I think, enjoy having students drop by during their hours off to visit with them and ask them questions and things like that. I always found that was the situation here at OSU when I was here, and I didn't do enough of that, and I think that's important.
What would you say to high school students who are thinking about attending OSU?
Well, it depends somewhat on their background, but I certainly have never hesitated to encourage people that if they're thinking about going to a 4-year university to start at OSU. We used to have a program there in Kay County, the Alumni Association did, where we took all the graduates, high school graduates in the county, to a banquet. Paid for their meal and that sort of thing, and of course it was a recruiting tool to get students to come to Oklahoma State University. But I certainly wouldn't hesitate to encourage people to go to Oklahoma State.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we didn't cover? Any special memory or experience that you want to share?
No, I think we've already mentioned the one. I tell you what, it's pretty exciting whenever we beat Wilt Chamberlain and the #1 Kansas Jayhawks at that time. That was probably one of the outstanding things that happened on campus. And then, of course, just the general atmosphere of a lot of the football games. I remember one game where we were beat in the final seconds by our #1 competitor from down south, and another game where we played the Air Force Academy and they won in the final seconds on a ricochet pass. I can remember those things. Just the camaraderie of attending the different sports events and things like that. Those stick with you. And then, of course, the people that you meet while you're here, you'll establish some lifelong friends.
Well, I'm glad that you're here for your 50th reunion this
Thank
year. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for participating in the interview for the library.